Sometimes life teaches us its deepest lessons in moments when we're closest to losing it. Grant Walker died for 47 seconds in a ballroom full of people who didn't care whether he lived or died. What he didn't expect was that the woman who brought him back to life would also completely change how he wanted to live it. Before we dive into this moving story, leave a comment below saying where you're watching from. Your presence means a lot to us. Enjoy this journey of faith and hope. The ballroom was packed with people Grant Walker didn't care to know, but whose opinions could ruin businesses, topple his reputation, or drown it in malicious whispers. He stood under the golden light of the Savannah Civic Center's chandelier, wearing a custom Italian suit, holding a glass of something expensive that he didn't taste. The applause came in waves, louder than he liked, echoing off the marble columns that seemed timeless, but had been polished especially for that night. "Brilliant," someone murmured behind him. "The speech, impeccable." Grant nodded politely. He couldn't remember half of what he'd said. A woman with red nails touched his arm. "Mr. Whitaker, could you give me a quote for Southern Future Weekly? Just one line." He smiled without warmth. "Of course, but I'd prefer to give it after I've had a moment to breathe." He moved away before she could pin him down in a conversation, making his way through groups of investors and city officials. The air was thick with perfume and ambition. He hated this kind of crowd. Too much charm, too little truth. He pushed through a side door and entered a silent hallway. The silence was immediate and shocking, as if someone had pressed pause on a movie. Grant exhaled. Then the floor moved. It wasn't exactly the world, it was him. A strange pressure in his chest. Pressure as if his ribs were shrinking. His vision blurred for a moment, and he blinked to clear it. He tried to pull himself together. He was probably just dehydrated. Too much talking, too little water. Maybe one of those canapes was spoiled. He took a step, then another. Then his knees gave out. He grabbed the edge of a bench, shallow breathing, heart pounding like an alarm bell inside his ribs. Panic attack, he told himself. That's all. But panic doesn't make the world spin like this. It doesn't make your fingertips go numb. It doesn't feel like drowning on dry land. Somewhere nearby, someone screamed. A female voice, urgent, commanding, "I need space. Someone call the paramedics now." Grant tried to lift his head. Everything was upside down. Or maybe it was him. People moved around him like shadows behind frosted glass. And then her. A pair of hands touched his chest, firm and sure. A braid swung loose beside his face. Her voice came low near his ear. "Don't go anywhere, okay? Stay with me." He couldn't see her, but he heard the calm. He heard something else too. Conviction. "I'll take care of you." She didn't wait for credentials or introductions. She took control as if she'd been born for it. Her fingers moved with trained urgency, breathing on his cheek, fingers pressing rhythmically on his sternum. "I need a defibrillator," she shouted, not to him, but to someone. Someone now, or he's not going to make it. Everything turned to white noise. Her voice was the only thread holding him. Then darkness. When Grant opened his eyes again, the ceiling was beige and still, a grid of fluorescent lights humming softly above him. He blinked. His mouth was dry, his chest ached, his arms itched with medical tape, machines beeping, the sterile smell of hospital antiseptic. He was alive. A man in a grey blazer stood at the foot of his bed. Assistant Gavin. Or was it Michael? Something forgettable. "Sir," the man said quickly, "you're stable, Memorial Health. We've informed your legal and PR teams." "The press hasn't picked up the story yet." Grant closed his eyes again. He didn't care about appearances. He cared about her. "The woman?" he asked hoarsely. The assistant paused. "Which woman?" "The one who saved me." There was a rustling of papers. "It's not clear. She's not an employee here. We're trying to find out." But the door opened before he could finish, and there she was. Scrubs, no makeup, a braid over one shoulder, calm eyes that didn't waver. Grant blinked. "You again?" She entered without asking. "I like to check on my patients." "I wasn't your patient." She raised an eyebrow. "Your heart stopped. I resuscitated you. That makes you mine for at least one more day." Grant frowned. You have a strange sense of ownership, and you have terrible bedside manner." The assistant opened his mouth, then wisely closed it and left. Grant sat up a little, ignoring the wires pulling at his skin. "Who are you?" "Eva Monroe, emergency room nurse, off duty." "Your lucky day. You were watching. Walking through the lobby, caught the end of your presentation, saw you faint, ran over." He studied her. "Most people don't run toward emergencies." "I do," she said simply. He watched her move across the room, checking machines as if she worked there. She didn't ask permission, didn't even look at his chart. She seemed to know. "You've been here before," he said. She gave him a small smile. "This isn't my first cardiac arrest." The silence stretched between them. She wasn't trying to impress him. That was rare, refreshing, disarming. She turned to leave. "I'm glad you're doing well, Mr. Whitaker." "Wait," he said, the word coming out before he could stop it. She stopped. "I owe you my life." She shrugged. "You don't owe me anything." "Then at least tell me why you ran." She looked over her shoulder, eyes steady. "Because I don't like losing people." And then she was gone. That night, Grant lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The pain had passed. The machines had gone quiet, but her voice remained. He didn't know her. Not really. But something about the way she moved, as if she wasn't afraid of him. As if she didn't need anything from him, stuck in his ribs. She didn't ask for credit. She didn't ask for anything. And that terrified him more than dying, because it made him want to know what kind of person saves a life and walks away without asking for anything in return. He didn't know until that moment, but something in him had changed, and for the first time in a very, very long time, he wanted more than survival. He wanted to feel alive. The rain fell in soft, slow drops outside Grant's hospital window, tapping against the glass like a metronome. It was the kind of Savannah rain that was in no hurry, just stayed, heavy with heat and memory. He sat propped up in bed, looking at the oaks blurred by water and mist, the city continuing without him. A stack of emails blinked on the tablet in his lap. He didn't open them. Instead, his eyes kept drifting to the door. No one said she would come back. No one needed to. But when it opened at 10:03, exactly the same time as yesterday, he almost smiled. Eva Monroe entered, casual, without warning. Her hair was still braided over her shoulder. She wore a navy cardigan over the scrubs today, sleeves rolled up, badge clipped to her hip. No clipboard, no coffee, just presence. "You came back," Grant said. "I work here," she replied, "not yesterday." "No," she said, walking to his bedside. "Yesterday I was going home. Today I'm between shifts." "Convenient." She gave him a dry look. "Don't flatter yourself." He felt the corner of his mouth curl. She didn't sit, just stood there, hands in pockets, observing him like a patient who wouldn't admit he was still bleeding. "Any chest pressure? Headaches?" "Only when people ask too many questions." She raised an eyebrow. "So, all the time then?" Grant let out a low laugh. Short, surprised. That sound had become strange. Evie came closer and gently pulled the stethoscope from her neck. "May I?" He hesitated, then nodded. Her hands were cold against his skin when she pressed the diaphragm to his chest. The silence in the room changed. Not uncomfortable, not clinical, just quiet. She listened. He observed her. Her forehead frowned slightly, not with worry, but with focus, as if she wasn't just listening to his heart, she was reading him. "You breathe like someone who's been holding their breath for a long time," she murmured. Grant blinked. "Is that a medical opinion?" She pulled back, meeting his eyes. "No, just an observation," he swallowed. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was revealing, and maybe that's what scared him more than the heart monitors. "How do you do that?" he asked softly. "Do what?" "Walk into a room like it belongs to you." "I don't," she said. "I just don't let anyone convince me it doesn't." Grant didn't know what to say about that, so he said nothing. She moved to the side table, checking his IV, scribbling something in the chart with practical ease. "You could rest, you know," she said without looking up. "You don't need to stay on high alert." He tilted his head. "Do you always talk to patients like this?" "Only the stubborn ones." Her voice wasn't cruel, If anything, it was familiar, like sunlight through blinds, soft, real, a little intrusive. "Has anyone ever told you you're difficult?" he asked. "Often, but usually by people who don't know how to listen to the truth." She turned back to him. "Your blood pressure is stabilizing." "That's good." He nodded, but wasn't thinking about numbers. "What do you want, Miss Monroe?" She blinked, not defensive, curious. "What do you mean?" "You're not here for protocol. You're not required. You came back." Evie looked at him for a long moment. "I don't like loose ends," she said. "Am I a loose end? I don't know what you are yet." She said it like a fact. No flirtation, no threat. Then she gathered her things. "I have to make rounds," she said, already halfway to the door. "Wait." She stopped, looking over her shoulder. "I'd like to give something back." Her expression didn't change. "You saved my life. That deserves something." Evie took a step back toward him. "Do you think what I did was transactional?" "No," he said carefully, "but I believe in reciprocity." She tilted her head. "And I believe in boundaries." That surprised him. "I don't want anything from you, Grant." It was the first time she'd used his first name. It sounded like something private. "I came back," she continued, "because you looked like someone who hasn't been asked why in a long time." He stared at her. "Why what? Why you push? Why you hide? Why you act like being vulnerable is a failure?" He exhaled. "You don't even know me." She smiled a small, knowing smile. "No, but I know the type." She turned to go again. This time, he didn't stop her. But when the door closed softly behind her, something new stirred in him. Something unknown, not attraction, not admiration, intrigue. The next morning, his assistant Mara arrived with a folder of contracts and a list of press statements to approve. "The media found out," she said, trying to sound indifferent. "The silence won't last much longer." "Then let it break," Grant said. She blinked. "Excuse me? I'm not interested in burying this. Not anymore. But it's your brand." He waved his hand. "Brands are manufactured. This," he gestured to the hospital, "the wires, the machines, isn't." Mara looked like she wanted to argue, but knew she shouldn't. When she left, he opened his laptop and typed, "To whom it may concern. Her name is Eva Monroe. She didn't ask permission to save my life. She also didn't ask for recognition. But if you're going to write about me, write about this, because sometimes the most important people in your story don't want to be in the spotlight. They just want you to live. GW." He closed the lid and leaned back. His reflection stared back at him in the window glass. Alive, and for the first time in years, uncertain what to do with this gift. On the morning Grant was discharged, Savannah seemed louder than usual. Outside the hospital, the world moved in sharp contrast to the quiet he'd grown accustomed to. Traffic hummed. A food cart opened with a clang on the corner. 2 college students laughed too loudly near the crosswalk. Everything felt strange, as if he'd stepped off a plane and forgotten the language of the place he used to call home. A black SUV waited at the curb, but he didn't move toward it. He stood there for a moment, hands in pockets, blazer too stiff against his skin. The tie he'd forced himself to wear again felt like a rope around his throat. People passed him without recognition. That was rare. He liked it. He didn't want to be Grant Walker, tech mogul, this morning. He just wanted to be a man who almost died and somehow came back different. The hospital doors opened behind him. He didn't need to look to know it was her. "I thought you'd be gone by now," Evie said, coming to stand beside him, not facing him, just standing. "I thought so too," he said. The silence stretched again, as it often did between them, not uncomfortable, just full like a held breath. "I sent something to the Tribune," he added. "I saw it." "Did you read it?" "Yes." A pause. "It was decent." He laughed just once. "High praise from you." She shrugged. "You didn't make it about yourself. That's something." He turned slightly toward her. "What if I want to make something about you?" Evie raised an eyebrow. "Are you planning to write another article?" "No." He paused. "I was thinking dinner." She blinked but didn't pull back. "Why?" "Because I don't know anything about the woman who saved my life, and I want to." Gratitude isn't a reason to start something," she said evenly. "It clouds everything else." "I'm not trying to pay back." You said I was. I changed my mind. Evie studied him. Not exactly his face, more like the space behind his eyes. He wasn't sure if she was looking for honesty or weakness. You're not used to hearing no, are you? She asked. He smiled. It's unfamiliar. Well, get used to it. He laughed, low and real. Just dinner. What if I say no? Then I'll eat alone and probably be disappointed in the food. Evie narrowed her eyes. I don't do press events or 5-course performances. No suits, no flash, just a restaurant. Somewhere quiet. She looked at him. You mean you'd go somewhere normal? I'm trying to remember what that is. She exhaled, thoughtful. One dinner, one deal. And if you try anything manipulative, I'm leaving. Fair warning. Evie looked at her watch. I have a trauma coming in 10 minutes. Don't make me regret this. I won't. She turned to go, then stopped, looked over her shoulder. I like Thai, she said. He nodded, filing this away as gospel. Noted. The restaurant was squeezed between a used bookstore and an old Baptist church on Whitaker Street, not far from where Grant grew up, though he hadn't walked these blocks in years. There was no valet, no terrace view, just a hand-painted sign and a small bell above the door that chimed when he entered. Evie was already there. She wore a dark green blouse, sleeves rolled to her elbows, her braid loose tonight, resting on her shoulder like a bookmark in a well-loved story. He approached quietly. I thought I was early. You were? I was earlier. He slid into the booth across from her. Do you always come prepared for battle? I'm not fighting you. He tilted his head. Are you sure? She studied him. Just used to people with power thinking that gives them permission to do what? Treat other people like supporting characters. He looked at her, then down. I deserve that. I didn't say it was about you, but it was. Evie didn't respond. The waiter came, left 2 menus. Grant didn't open his. Order whatever you want. She raised an eyebrow. I was going to anyway. That made him smile. She studied the menu. Have you been here before? No, but the Yelp review said the curry is exceptional. Her eyes went up. You read Yelp? I'm not completely disconnected from reality, Evie murmured, unconvinced. They ordered. The silence that followed was quieter than before, not empty, just waiting. So, she said, leaning back, what does a man like you do the day after his heart stops? He met her gaze. Invite someone to dinner. That's all. No. I also cancelled 3 meetings, ignored my inbox, and told my board I needed a week off. She raised her eyebrows. Wow, I think I scared them. They deserved it. He smiled, then got serious. Do you believe people can change? Evie was quiet for a moment. I believe people can want to change. That's not the same thing. No, she said, but that's where it starts. The food came, steaming and fragrant. They ate for a few minutes in silence. Grant found himself watching her, not staring, but observing, the way she used her left hand more than her right, the way she tasted food before answering questions, the way she never once looked at her phone. So, what's your story? He asked. Evie looked up, chewing. What made you run into a room full of strangers for a man you'd never met? She finished chewing, drank water. Does it matter? It matters to me. She exhaled through her nose. I've lost people, she said softly. Fast, suddenly. Once you've watched a life slip away in silence, you stop hesitating. Grant's throat tightened. Family? My father. When I was 17. I'm sorry. You didn't do it. Still? He said nothing. Evie leaned forward. You want the truth? He nodded. I didn't save you because you're important or rich or a headline. So why? Because you were right there. And if I hadn't done something, I would have had to live with that silence again. Grant leaned back. I understand that, he said softly. Evie tilted her head. Do you? I lost my brother, Caleb. Cancer. I signed his palliative care papers, told myself I'd be back in time. I wasn't. Her expression didn't change, but something did shift in the air between them. Grief is a quiet thing, she said gently. Until it isn't. He nodded. For a long time, neither of them spoke. And then, without fanfare, she reached across the table, not to his hand, but to the folded napkin beside his elbow. "You spilled sauce," she said, wiping the edge of the table. He laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was ordinary. And in that moment, it seemed something more powerful than any speech or strategy he'd ever written. Connection, real, unadorned. Like maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something he didn't know how to name yet, but deeply, quietly, already didn't want to lose. The photo hit the internet at 7:42 a.m. By 8:00, it was trending in local news discussions. By noon, it was everywhere. Evie didn't see it until halfway through her shift. Her phone buzzed between patients. Another beep, then a cluster of notifications that made her chest tighten before she even unlocked the screen. There they were, she and Grant standing outside the Thai restaurant, her hand casually, unconsciously resting against his chest while she laughed at something he said. The streetlight above them cast just enough light to give the moment a softness she'd never intended. Below the image, nurse who saved Savannah billionaire, or more than that? Evie stared at the screen in disbelief. She hadn't posted anything. Grant hadn't posted anything. Someone else had. A passerby maybe, or worse. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing. By 2 p.m., the article had been picked up by 3 regional blogs and a national gossip site. By 2:45, her name was trending. By 3 p.m., she was called into her supervisor's office. "You're not in trouble, Doctor," Whitaker said, raising his hands like a peace offering. "But we're getting questions. Donors, press, the board." Evie stood stiff in front of his desk. "I didn't leak the photo. I believe you. Then why am I here?" He sighed. "Because perception matters, Evie. Because we're a hospital, not a stage. And because you, like it or not, are now linked to a man who can move headlines. I didn't ask for this. I know, but it happened." She stared at him, jaw tight. "We're putting you on administrative leave," he said gently. "Temporary, just until things cool down." She blinked. "So I do my job, save a man's life. And now I'm being sent away because the internet got curious?" "No," he said softly. "You're being sent away because they're ruthless, and I'd rather have you mad at me than destroyed by them." Evie didn't speak. "Take some time," he added. "Clear your head. Let the noise die down." Ooh! When she left his office, her chest felt like it was wrapped in barbed wire. She didn't cry, just shut down. Grant only found out an hour later when Mara stormed into his office with a tablet. "Did you see this?" He took it from her without looking, already feeling the weight of it in his stomach. The photo, the headline, the comments, ER nurse or social climber, gold digger or good Samaritan. It didn't matter how noble the truth was. The internet had already written its own version. "She's been suspended," Mara said, "effective this afternoon." Grant stood up. "Call Dr. Whitaker." "Already did. He won't reverse it." "I'm going to fix this," Grant said, grabbing his jacket. Mara positioned herself in front of the door. "No," she froze. "You can't fix this with a donation or press release," she said. "You show up, make noise, and you'll only drag her deeper into this mess." His jaw tightened. "She's being punished for something I caused." "Yes," Mara said. "So don't make it worse." He stared at her, silent, breathing hard. "Let her come to you," she said, "if she wants to." But every instinct in his body screamed against it. Doing nothing felt like betrayal. Evie didn't go home that night. She went to Rosa's place, the small apartment above the gallery, where her cousin kept paint-splattered coffee mugs and always left the windows cracked, even when the air was sticky with heat. Rosa didn't ask questions, just handed her a glass of water and said, "The couch is yours." Evie curled up in the corner, scrolling through comments until her eyes burned. She's manipulating him. She knew exactly what she was doing. Another nobody trying to become somebody. She turned off the screen, stared at the ceiling. The room seemed too quiet, her mind too loud. She wasn't angry at Grant. Not yet. She was angry at everything else. The idea that saving someone made her suspect. The idea that getting too close to power made her motives dirty. The idea that being seen, even for a second, meant being consumed. And somewhere underneath all of this, she was scared. Scared that Grant would try to sweep this under the rug or worse, that he'd try to protect her like another one of his assets. He didn't text that night, didn't call, didn't send flowers or a driver, or carefully worded apologies. The silence was deafening and deliberate. It meant he knew this wasn't a problem to solve. It was a line, and she needed to decide if he'd already crossed it. The next morning, Evie walked alone along the riverfront. The world hadn't changed, just her place in it. Tourists still laughed too loudly by the fountain. The ferry still cut slowly through the mist. Newsboys still threw headlines at doors like pebbles against windows. She stopped at a bench and sat down, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to feel. The sadness, the exhaustion, the pure unfairness of it all, and then a voice behind her. "I didn't come to fix." She turned. Grant stood a few feet away, hands in pockets, eyes unguarded for the first time. "I came to tell you I was wrong." She didn't move. "About what?" "About thinking I could protect you by controlling everything." She looked at him long and steady. "You can't buy silence. You can't erase the internet. I know. And I don't need you to rescue me. I know that too." He sat beside her, careful not to intrude. "I thought if I could handle everything, the press, the backlash, the chaos, then maybe you wouldn't have to carry any of it. But that's not love. That's arrogance." Eva looked at her hands. "You once told me that saving lives isn't about choosing who deserves it." He nodded. "And you showed me that love isn't about choosing who needs it." She let that hang in the air for a moment, then said softly, "I need space." Grant's throat tightened. "Okay, I need to find my own ground again without the weight of being someone's scandal." "I understand." She finally looked at him. "And when I come back, if I come back, it can't be because you built a safe place for me to land. It has to be because I walked back alone." He nodded once. She stood slowly, then turned, not walking away from him, but toward herself. And Grant, for the first time in his life, let someone go. Not because he didn't care, but because he finally understood that real love doesn't chase. It waits quietly. If it's true, it waits. Grant had never liked silence. In boardrooms, he filled it with precision. In interviews, with calculated answers. At home, he filled it with nothing. The echo of his own footsteps on hardwood floors, the hum of refrigerators, the faint ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. They'd been enough to remind him he was still moving, still relevant. But this silence, this was different. It wasn't absence, it was measured, intentional, deserved distance. 3 days had passed since Evie walked away from that bench by the riverfront. No calls, no messages, no regret whispered hidden in his inbox. And yet she filled every inch of his thoughts. He stood in the kitchen of his historic house on Gaston Street, sleeves rolled up, coffee going cold on the counter. Morning sun poured through the tall windows in soft golden lines, but he didn't feel its warmth. He read newspaper headlines out of habit, but his eyes just skimmed over them. Everything seemed like static, until his gaze landed on a short article buried in the back of the Savannah Tribune's lifestyle section. Local nurse leaves hospital amid controversy. They'd used a photo of her, not the viral one. This was older, from a community event. She was in the middle of a laugh, surrounded by children at a health screening booth, her stethoscope hanging casually around her neck. The caption stung, "Hero or opportunist?" Grant's stomach turned. He didn't know what burned more, the headline or the fact that she had to read this too. By noon, he was sitting in the guest room of the house he never entered. It still smelled like cedar and dust. He hadn't changed anything since his brother died. The blinds were half closed, filtering light in patterns that fell across the untouched desk. The framed photo on the shelf, Caleb's graduation, the last real smile Grant remembered giving without effort. He stared at the photo. "I'm messing this up, aren't I?" he said softly. The silence answered him. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "I didn't know how to give someone space without trying to solve her life." His voice cracked slightly. "I still don't." He sat there for a while. No calls, no distractions, just the past, thick and heavy in the air, until he finally got up and did something he hadn't done since Caleb died. He went to the master bedroom, opened the top drawer of the dresser, and pulled out a small unmarked notebook. It was leather-bound, worn. Inside, pages of notes, scribbles, appointments, Caleb's handwriting, sharp, quick, messy. One page caught his attention. Talk to Grant before it's too late. Grant's breath stopped. He turned the page. Nothing. He closed the book, heart pounding hard. Then he made a decision. The next morning, he showed up at Dr. Langley's office without an appointment. The receptionist blinked at him as if he didn't belong there. He didn't blame her. Is she available? She's not expecting you, Mr. Whitaker. I'm aware. Please tell her I'm here anyway. Dr. Langley, an elegant woman in her 50s with eyes that missed nothing, emerged 10 minutes later. I don't normally do walk-in consultations, she said, crossing her arms. I don't normally do therapy. She gave a weak smile. That's clear. He followed her into the office, sat on the worn leather couch as if it might bite him. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then he said, I think I push people away, but tell myself I'm protecting them. She didn't write anything down, didn't interrupt. He continued, I lost my brother because I thought I had more time. Lost Evie. Maybe because I thought love was about control. Silence, then, why now? Because I'm tired of feeling like connection is a negotiation. Dr. Langley leaned back. That's a start. He blinked. That's it? She smiled. It's your first session. We start where you are. Eve sat in Rosa's kitchen, legs tucked under her, holding a chipped mug of black tea. The walls were covered with art and dried paint. The fan above her creaked with each rotation. I saw your face again this morning, Rosa said, sliding a tablet across the table. Evie didn't look. Every time I go online, there I am. I know. Evie finally picked up the tablet, looked at the article, then turned it face down. I didn't even do anything wrong. Rosa nodded. But it feels like I'm being punished for being visible. Her cousin spoke softly. Being visible as a woman always comes with a cost. Doesn't mean it's fair. Doesn't mean you stop showing up. Evie stared at the mug. He didn't call. Maybe he's respecting your boundary. Maybe, she whispered. Or maybe he's just not used to waiting. There was a knock at the door. Evie froze. Rosa raised an eyebrow, walking to answer. When the door opened, Evie's breath caught in her throat. Grant stood there. No driver, no entourage, no grand gestures. Just him. He held something in his hand. Is she here? He asked. Rosa looked back. Evie met his eyes from across the room. Hers were cautious, guarded. He entered slowly, extending the notebook. This belonged to Caleb, he said. I've been reading. Evie didn't take it. Instead, she said, Why are you here, Grant? Because I finally stayed quiet long enough to hear myself think. He placed the notebook on the table between them. I can't undo what happened. I can't silence the press, but I can tell you this. He paused, breath failing. I'm doing therapy. Her eyes widened, but she said nothing. I'm not telling you this to impress you, he added. I'm telling you because I need to learn how to stop breaking the things I care about. The room went quiet. Rosa quietly left, leaving them alone. Evie stared at the notebook, then at him, and finally softly. I'm not a secret, Grant. I'm not a prize. I'm not a PR cleanup. I know. I don't want to be saved. I want to be seen. He nodded. And if you can't do that, he came closer. I can, he said, but only if I stop being right all the time, being in control. She studied him. He didn't back down. Finally, she picked up the notebook, opened it, and for the first time in 4 days, let the silence between them breathe. Not because there was nothing left to say, but because the next chapter would be written by choice, not force. Evie stood at the edge of Forsyth Park just before sunset, the sky melting into amber and rose above the moss-draped oaks. The breeze carried the scent of magnolia and the faint hum of a saxophone from somewhere across the square. Grant sat on the bench behind her, elbows on knees, head down, not in defeat, but in something quieter. Reflection, humility. She hadn't said much since picking up the notebook. A few hours earlier, she'd read Caleb's words under the buzzing light of Rosa's kitchen, turning each page slowly as if it might disappear if she turned too fast. The entries weren't dramatic. They were human, lonely, hopeful, full of moments of fear, small joys, and unfinished sentences. Caleb had loved his brother fiercely, but he'd also been afraid that Grant would never stop running from everything that hurt. Evie turned now, watching him. His hair was messy, jacket hung over the back of the bench. He looked like a man who had finally stopped performing for the world. She moved closer and sat beside him. He looked at her only once before returning his eyes to the ground. "I didn't expect you to come," he said. "I wasn't sure I would either." A pause. "Caleb's words," she said gently. "They're full of love, but also silence, like he was trying to carry everything alone." Grant barely nodded. "I know that silence," she added. "It's the same one I lived in for years. Different reasons, same weight." He turned his head toward her. "When I lost him, I didn't grieve," he said. "I just kept going. Built, expanded, opened offices in cities I didn't even want to live in because slowing down meant feeling." She murmured, "Yes." Another long pause. The saxophone drifted closer, just a soft, winding melody like a memory. "I saw your statement in the paper," she said. Finally, he looked at her. Too little, too late. It was honest. Too honest. There's no such thing. They let the silence sit between them. Not heavy now. Not thick with unspoken things. Just quiet, honest, settled. "I'm not ready for anything public," she said. "No interviews, no appearances, no dinner somewhere with white tablecloths and someone at the next table taking pictures." "I understand. I'm not asking for secrecy," she added. "Just space, boundaries, real life." He nodded. "What does that look like for you?" "Coffee on my porch," she said. "Quiet dinners that don't come with press releases. Not pretending we're something for anyone else." A soft smile touched his lips. "I can do porches." She looked at him, really looked. "You always seem so composed, like nothing could rattle you." He laughed dryly. "It's an illusion. Underneath I'm chaos." "That's comforting." "Is it?" She nodded. "It means I'm not the only one who's scared." Their eyes met, and for the first time, neither looked away. 2 days later, they met again, this time at her apartment, barefoot and coffee-stained, a world away from the sharp edges of his usual life. He brought food from a Caribbean hole-in-the-wall she'd mentioned once in passing. "You remembered," she said as she opened the bag. "I remember everything you say." She paused, container halfway to the counter. "That's either charming or terrifying." He smiled. "I'm still working on the balance." They ate at the small kitchen table, plates balanced on mismatched placemats, laughter flowing more freely than it had in weeks. When she teased the way he pronounced plantain, he pretended to be offended. "That's how they say it in New York." "Well, you're in Savannah now," she teased. His smile lingered. "I know." Later, when the sky darkened and the cicadas began their nightly chorus, she stepped out onto her porch. He followed her. The wood creaked under their feet, but the air seemed easier out here, softer. "Do you ever get tired of being careful?" she asked, leaning against the railing. "All the time. I spent so long taking care of other people, forgot what it's like to just exist without being needed." He looked at her. "You don't need to be needed with me." She turned slowly. "I don't want to be an inspiration moment in your story, Grant. You're not. I'm not trying to teach you how to be better. I'm not asking you to. I don't want to be a project or an obligation or a second chance wrapped in guilt. You're none of those things." She searched his face, voice lower now. "Then what am I?" He didn't answer immediately, walked toward her slowly, not closing the distance all at once, just enough to be near. "You're the person I think about when I stop pretending I'm okay." Evie's breath caught. "That day in the hospital," he continued, "when you told me not to go anywhere I wasn't sure I wanted to stay. I'd been carrying so much for so long and didn't even know why anymore." His voice cracked slightly. "But you didn't hesitate. You didn't look at me like a brand or a failure or a machine that had broken. You saw me." Evie's eyes didn't leave his. "I don't know what this is yet," he said, "but I want to figure it out without titles, without cameras, without scripts." She nodded slowly. "I'm not asking you to figure it out overnight," he added. "I just want to be someone who shows up, not perfectly, just consistently." She moved closer. "This is new for you. Terrifying," he admitted. "Good." She smiled. Not the practice smile she gave the world, but the real one, the soft one, that didn't need to prove anything. Okay, she whispered. He tilted his head. Okay, let's try it this way. Our way. His shoulders dropped with the kind of exhale that sounded like years finally released. They stood there in the thick southern twilight, the cicadas humming like applause beneath the quiet. No promises, no fireworks, just present. And sometimes that was more than enough. The first time Grant entered Eva's world, really entered it, he wasn't wearing a suit. He wore jeans, a soft navy t-shirt, sneakers that seemed to belong to someone still learning to live without armor. It was a Tuesday, and he brought no plan or flowers or expectations, just coffee. 2 cups, one with almond milk, no sugar, exactly how she liked it. Evie opened her apartment door with a paintbrush in one hand and a smudge of navy blue on her cheek. She blinked, surprised. "I didn't think you'd actually come." "I said I wanted to try," he said, lifting the cups, "and I come bearing caffeine." She stepped aside. "Come in, just don't judge the mess." He entered and stopped. It wasn't mess, it was life. Books stacked on chairs, a plant that needed water, an unfinished canvas leaning against the wall, sky painted but no ground yet. The kind of space that didn't need to impress. It just was. She took his cup and sipped. "You remembered." "I remember everything," he said again, softer this time. She smiled and gestured to the couch. "Sit." He did, settling awkwardly like someone not used to soft furniture. She sat across from him, legs tucked under her, the window light caught in her hair. "So," she said, "what's the real reason you came?" He looked at her. "I wanted to see where you're most yourself." She raised an eyebrow. "And? It's noisier than I expected." "Noisy? Color, texture, all of this. You live in feeling." She smiled a little. "You live in strategy." He nodded. "I'm trying to stop." They sat in silence for a moment, comfortable now, like a song they both knew the rhythm to. "Can I show you something?" she asked. "Always." She went to a shelf and pulled out a small, worn photo album, handed it to him. "My father used to keep these before he died." He opened the book and saw her younger, shorter hair, wide smile. Her father beside her, tall, proud, arms around her shoulder like the world couldn't touch them. "He looks kind," Grant said. He was, until the end. She sat beside him now, shoulder brushing his. "I used to think that if I was useful enough, good enough, careful enough, the people I loved wouldn't leave." He looked at her slowly. "I know that feeling." She nodded. "But they still did, and I had to learn how to stay anyway. For myself." They didn't speak for a while after that. Words weren't necessary, and then her phone buzzed. She checked the screen and frowned. "What is it?" he asked. "It's from Nurse May. She said someone left a letter for me at the hospital." Grant blinked. "What kind of letter?" "I don't know. She said it was personal, no name, just handwritten." He watched her. "Are you okay?" "I don't know yet." She looked at him. "You didn't do this, did you?" "No. I haven't spoken to anyone at Memorial since." She nodded. "Want to come with me?" "No," she said quickly, then softer. "But thank you." She stood and grabbed her bag. He stood too. "I'll walk you down," he said. They went outside into the sunlight together. The city humming, alive, indifferent. The tension was quiet now under the surface. Not conflict, but a shift, trust, tested, still holding. At the hospital, Nurse May met them at the back entrance. She was older, silver curls pinned back, eyes sharp as always. "Here," she said, pressing a sealed envelope into Evie's hand. No return address, but it came with a second envelope for him. Evie looked down. There were 2 envelopes, one with her name, the other Grant Walker. She looked at him. "You're sure you didn't?" He took the envelope slowly, turning it over. "Positive." Evie opened hers first, read the first line, froze, then read the second and third. When she finished, she folded it once and put it away. "Evie, it's from Caleb's hospice nurse," she said, her voice tight. She saw the article, the backlash. "Wanted to reach out." Grant swallowed hard. "What does it say?" She wrote about Caleb, about how he used to talk about you every day, how proud he was of you even when you stopped coming. His face fell. She said, "He forgave you before you even asked." Grant's hands shook as he opened his own letter. His eyes scanned the page. He didn't speak, not for a long time. Evie moved closer gently. "Hey!" He looked up, eyes glassy. "She said he asked her to write me in case I ever came back to myself." Evie put a hand on his arm. "She said, 'Love doesn't keep score,'" he whispered. "It just waits." They stood there side by side while the world moved around them. Nurses came and went. A patient laughed from a wheelchair passing by. Life didn't stop for grief, but for a moment, Grant did. He folded the letter slowly. "I want to visit his grave," he said. Evie nodded. "I'll come with you. I need to do this alone first." She didn't pull back. "I'll wait," she said. "Right here." And she did. While he walked away, letter clutched in his hand like something sacred. She sat on the stone bench outside the hospital, watching the sky change from gold to grey, waiting not to be chosen or saved or redeemed, just to be part of something real. And in that waiting, something deeper took root. Not a beginning, not an ending, but a choice, becoming something more. Together or apart, always earned, never assumed. The gravel path to the Whitaker family plot wound through a grove of longleaf pines and wild grass dappled with sun. It wasn't a place Grant visited often, not because he didn't care, but because every visit cracked something inside him that never healed right. He parked his car at the edge of the clearing and walked the rest alone. Caleb's nurse's letter folded in his back pocket, his hands shoved deep in the sleeves of a soft navy sweater he'd once borrowed from his brother and never returned. Caleb's stone was simple. No gold, no quotes, just his name, 2 dates, and the quiet. Grant stood in front of it for a long time, breathing through the pressure in his chest. He didn't speak right away. There was too much and not enough time. Finally, he sat in the grass. "I should have come sooner," he said. His voice didn't echo. "You didn't need to. I kept telling myself that what I was doing, building all this, was for you, for both of us. But really, it was for me, to run from the guilt, to turn grief into concrete and money and press releases." He looked at the stone. "I forgot you didn't want any of that." A bird sang in the distance. The trees rustled. "I met someone." The words came out unexpectedly. Soft, real. "Her name is Evie. She doesn't pretend to like the parts of me that are broken, but she sees them anyway. And somehow, that's harder than being loved for the image." He swallowed. "She saved my life, but she won't let me make her a symbol of it." He let the silence breathe for one more moment, then reached into his pocket and unfolded the letter. "She told me what your nurse wrote about how you talked about me even when I wasn't there." His hand trembled slightly. "You forgave me before I asked. I don't know what to do with that." He folded the letter again, placed it gently at the base of the headstone, and stood up. Then, with one last look at the stone, he said softly, "I'm going to try to be someone you'd be proud of, not for what I build, but for what I hold on to." He turned and walked back the way he came. This time his steps felt lighter. Evie was still on the bench outside the hospital when he found her. Her hair had come loose in the wind, and she was scrolling through a list on her phone, eyes narrowed. He stopped a few steps away. "You waited." She looked up, stood up. "You asked for space. I gave it." He nodded slowly. "Thank you. How was it?" He breathed. "Quiet, but I heard everything I needed to." She reached out, gently plucking a leaf from his shoulder. "Are you okay?" "No," he said honestly, "but I'm better than yesterday." Her expression softened. "Good." They stood for a moment, the city spinning around them, horns in the distance, a bell tolling at the cathedral, but the space between them stayed quiet. Then she lifted her phone. "I've been thinking." "Dangerous," he teased. "Very." She turned the screen toward him. "There's a grant program for mental health support in underserved areas. It's small, but it's something." He looked at her. "You want to apply?" "I want to do more than apply. I want to build something with you. If you're still serious about this partnership, not just between us, but something real, something lasting, we could make a difference." His eyes lit up with something that had been dormant for a long time. "I thought you didn't want to be part of my world. I don't want to be absorbed by it, but if we make a new one, I'm in." Grant took the phone, scanned the details. Community clinic, sliding scale, employee therapy, crisis response without law enforcement involvement. He looked at her. You've been dreaming about this for years. Why me? Because you have the resources, and now you have the reason. He exhaled, the weight of everything slowly shifting into something more purposeful. What would we call it? He asked. She smiled. Doesn't matter, as long as the people it helps don't have to Google our names to feel like they belong. He handed the phone back. Then let's do it. She stared at him, eyebrow raised. Just like that? No contracts, no committees. Just two people who've lost enough to know what matters. He reached for her hand, not dramatically, just gently. Let's start small, she said. Planning meeting at the cafe? More like porch meeting. Mine tomorrow after your therapy. He smiled. You remember everything too? She nodded. It's how I survived. His hand squeezed hers. Not possessive, but firm. You're not surviving anymore, he said. You're building. She leaned her head against his shoulder, the sky darkening into lavender above them. I know, she whispered, and for the first time in a long time, I don't want to do it alone. Neither said anything more after that. They didn't need to. The partnership had already begun. Evie's porch had become their sanctuary. Most people thought healing looked like an epiphany, a big moment, a big realization. But really it was slower, quieter, more like the gradual way light fills a room at sunrise, inch by inch, until suddenly it's bright and you hadn't even noticed it happening. Grant arrived with 2 coffees again, this time with little yellow post-its on the lids. Hers said, no chaos, just cream. His said, trying not to control everything. She laughed when she took hers. You're getting better at this. Therapy is paying off, he said, settling into the old rocking chair beside her. Last week I admitted I don't know how to sit still without feeling like I'm failing. She looked at him over the rim of her mug. That's huge, he shrugged. She said I can sit with discomfort instead of running from it, and I hated it. Evie laughed softly. You're not alone in that. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. The air carried the scent of blooming gardenias, and somewhere across the street, a sprinkler kicked on with rhythmic precision. Then Grant leaned forward, elbows on knees. I talked to one of my board members this morning. Evie straightened. About the clinic? Sort of. About stepping back. Her eyebrows went up. Seriously? He nodded. Not completely. Not yet. But I told them I want to allocate part of my time and budget to what we're building. That means less time on stage, fewer panels, more life. Evie searched his face for signs of hesitation. There were none. I didn't expect you to actually change your world, she said. He met her eyes. I didn't either until I realized how tired I was of living in rooms where I couldn't breathe. His voice was low now. And do you think this clinic, will give you air? I think you will. Evie looked away, not from discomfort, but to contain emotion. Her fingers tightened around the coffee mug. I got a call from my mother, she said suddenly. That made him sit up. I thought you weren't in contact. We weren't until now. He waited. She's sick, early dementia. Her neighbor reached out and gave me her number, said she keeps asking for me. His expression softened. I didn't know how to respond, she admitted. I told myself for years that she didn't want anything to do with me, but now she does. She wants forgiveness, or maybe just peace. She didn't look at him when she added, I don't know if I'm ready to give either. Grant leaned back in his chair, gaze on the horizon. My therapist says forgiveness is more about us than them. Eva smiled weakly. You quote your therapist a lot lately. She's smarter than I am. She finally turned to him. What would you do? Listen, ask myself what kind of person I want to be in 5 years and act toward that version of me. The silence hung between them for a moment. Then she whispered, I don't want to carry this pain forever. You don't have to. She stood suddenly. Come with me. Where? To see her. Not today, but soon. He blinked. Now. Not today, but soon. He stood too, slowly. Of course. I don't need you to fix it, she said. I just don't want to walk into that room alone. He moved closer. You'll never have to do that, he said. Her hand found his, warm and trembling. They stood like that, until the sun slipped lower in the sky and the streetlights flickered to life one by one. The next afternoon, Grant walked into his office for what might be one of his last formal board meetings as CEO. He wore no tie, no script, just a quiet calm that surprised even him. The executive conference room buzzed until he tapped his glass on the table. The chatter died instantly. "I'm not going to take much of your time," he said, "just enough to explain what comes next." He spoke clearly and evenly about burnout, about meaning, about building something that mattered beyond metrics. "I spent years being good at everything except being present," he said. "I'm changing that, not just for me, but for the people we say we're building for." There were questions. Of course there were, but there was no resistance, just surprise. Afterward, when the room emptied, his assistant lingered in the doorway. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. He nodded. "I've never been more sure of anything." Evie stood outside the small assisted living center 30 minutes west of Savannah, watching sunlight filter through the Spanish moss above. Her hands were shaking. The place smelled like lavender oil and warm bread. And inside, a nurse named Carmen greeted her with a gentle smile. "She's been asking if you were real," Carmen said softly. "If she dreamed you." Evie swallowed. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say much," the nurse replied. "Just be there." She nodded. Inside the room, her mother sat in a worn armchair, knitting something uneven and colorful. The moment she looked up, her eyes went wide. Evie froze. Then, "Evie," her mother breathed. Evie nodded, walking in. I thought you might never come." "I wasn't sure I would either," Evie said honestly. Her mother's hands shook and the knitting fell to the floor. "I messed everything up. You hurt me," Evie replied, "for a long time." "I know." Silence. Then her mother added, "I'm sorry. I was scared of being alone, of not being enough, and I took it out on the only person who always stayed." Evie felt something break, and not in a painful way, in a freeing way. "I'm not here to fix the past," she said. Her mother looked down, ashamed. "I'm here to say, I'm not going to carry this anymore." Tears formed in both their eyes. "I don't know what tomorrow looks like," Evie added, "but today, I'm here." Her mother slowly reached out her hand, and Evie took it. Outside, Grant waited in the car, watching the entrance through the windshield, heart tight in his chest. He didn't go in, didn't text, just waited like he promised, and when she finally emerged into the fading light, eyes swollen but steady, he didn't speak, just opened the passenger door, and when she slid in beside him, she whispered, "Let's go home." For the first time, he knew exactly what that meant. The day after Evie saw her mother, she didn't get out of bed until noon. Not because she was sad, not exactly. It was something more. A strange, emotional hangover, like her soul needed silence to process the shift. Everything felt heavier, but in a way that said something had moved, something long buried. She heard the soft knock on the door, but didn't answer. A second later, she heard the creak of the porch swing. Grant, of course. He didn't call her name, didn't press. She got up slowly, wrapped in an old cotton robe, hair a mess, and walked barefoot to the porch. He sat there with a brown paper bag and a thermos beside him. She sank into the chair next to him without saying a word. He handed her a warm biscuit and a thermos cap full of coffee, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You don't have to talk," he said. She took the coffee, sipped, let the warmth anchor her. "I don't know how to feel," she finally whispered. "You don't have to know yet." It wasn't forgiveness. Not really. It was more like letting go of the need for a different ending. That still peace. She looked at him, eyes tired but clearer. "How do you always say exactly what I need to hear?" "Because I've been you. Still am most days." Evie took another sip, then let her head gently fall to his shoulder. He didn't flinch, just adjusted enough for her to be more comfortable. "You smell like butter and paper," she murmured. "Southern breakfast essentials." She smiled weakly, then closed her eyes. "Stay for a while. I have nowhere else I'd rather be." They didn't leave the porch for hours. At some point, she fell asleep with her head still resting on him, the sun filtering through the lattice, casting broken light on the floorboards. He didn't move, just let her rest. Let her be. Later that evening, Rosa arrived with a bottle of iced tea and a small stack of mail. Eva was in the kitchen slicing peaches. "You didn't tell me you had company," Rosa said with a mischievous smile as she peeked toward the porch. Evie smiled. "He's not company. He's just here." Rosa raised an eyebrow. "You say that like it's not a miracle." Evie handed her a peach slice. "Sometimes it feels too good, like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop." "You mean like when you were waiting for every man in your life to leave you after 2 kind gestures?" Evie gave her a look. "I'm just saying," Rosa continued, chewing. "Maybe this time the other shoe never drops. Maybe it just fits." Evie paused, knife still in her hand. "Do you think people like us get that lucky?" "I think people like us need to stop calling healing luck." That hit hard. Evie put the peaches in a bowl, wiping her hands on a towel. "I got a call this morning," she said, "about the grant." Rosa's eyes went wide. "Are you serious?" "We got it. They want us to come next week and finalize terms." Rosa moved closer, taking Evie's hands. "This is huge." "I know. And you're scared." "I am. Do it anyway." Evie nodded slowly. "I told Grant I'd go, but wanted to tell you first. You've carried this vision with me longer than anyone." Rosa squeezed her hand. "And I'll carry it to the end." Grant came in at that moment, catching just the tail end. "Did I miss something?" Evie turned, a quiet joy spreading across her face. "We got the grant." He froze, then smiled. "We got it?" "We got it." He crossed the room and wrapped his arms around her waist instinctively. She leaned into him without hesitation. "I knew you would," he whispered. Evie looked at him. "This is going to change everything." "Then let's change." That night, the 3 of them sat under string lights in Rosa's backyard. Dinner spread across the table, laughter warm and easy. Grant watched Evie in the soft light, amazed at how far they'd come. A few weeks ago, she was a nurse who didn't want to be saved. Now she was a builder of bridges, of homes, of peace. He leaned close to her when she finished a story about her first day of nursing school. "I think I'm falling in love with you," he said softly. She stopped, looked at him, not shocked, not scared, just quiet. And then she smiled. "I know," she whispered. "You knew since the second time you brought coffee without asking how I take it." He smiled. "Should I have waited to say it?" "No," she said, threading her fingers through his. "But don't say it to fill a silence. Say it because you can't hold it in anymore." "I can't." "Good." They leaned back as Rosa brought dessert, peach pie with too much cinnamon, and a scoop of ice cream melting on top. Evie laughed at something Rosa said, resting her head on Grant's shoulder again, and he realized, in that quiet backyard, with laughter echoing off old brick walls and the scent of peaches in the air, this was what home looked like. No stage lights, no press, just her and him. And a life they were building from the ashes of everything they thought they'd lost. It happened on a Wednesday. Not a dramatic day. No storm clouds. No headlines, just the kind of Savannah morning that slips in quietly. Slow sunlight, the hum of cicadas, air thick with the scent of magnolia. Evie was brushing her hair, half listening to NPR, when her phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was Rosa. "You might want to sit down." Evie's heart paused mid-beat. Rosa never said things like that unless she meant it. "I'm sitting. There's a feature article about Grant and you." Evie's grip on the phone tightened. "What kind of feature?" "It's from The Atlantic, and it's not just a profile. It's a deep dive. Your past, the foundation, the clinic you, everything." Evie stood up. "Did he know?" "I don't think so. But Evie, it's not a hit piece. It's complicated, honest, but it names you, your mother, your work, your apartment." Evie's chest tightened. "They doxed me. No addresses, but enough details to make people curious." Evie hung up without saying goodbye. She didn't mean to, but her pulse was racing and her vision was narrowing, and suddenly everything inside her felt like it was spiraling. A knock at the door. She already knew it was him. When she opened it, Grant's face said everything before he spoke. "I just found out," he said softly. "You knew this was coming," she replied, not angry. "Not yet, but already halfway to some emotion she didn't want to name. I didn't know. I gave a general interview weeks ago. Thought it was about the foundation, the mental health initiative. I didn't know they would dig." Her arms crossed over her chest. "You should have warned me. Should have told me this could happen. I didn't think." "That's the problem, Grant. You didn't think." She stepped back inside, leaving the door open. He followed her carefully, as if her living room had turned to thin ice. "You told me I wouldn't be dragged into your world, that we were building something new." "We are." "Then why does it feel like I'm collateral damage?" He winced. "That's not fair." "No, what's not fair is having every private part of my life dissected for public consumption because of who I'm dating. I didn't choose this timing. I didn't leak anything. But you didn't prevent it either." The silence hung between them, and then she said the words that split him open. "I need space." He stared at her. "Evie." "Not because I don't care," she said, voice softer now, "but because I do care. And if we're going to build something that lasts, I need to know it's on solid ground, not just charm and promises and shared grief." He moved closer. "I love you." Her eyes filled with tears. "I know. But love isn't enough if it keeps burning everything around it." Her voice cracked. "I never wanted this to hurt you." "I believe you." "Then let me stay." She shook her head. "I need to remember who I am without you in the room." The words weren't cruel. They were honest. He nodded once, twice, then turned toward the door. Just before he left, he paused. "That thing we're building, the clinic, I'm not going to stop working on it. I don't want you to stop." "I'll wait," he said. "Not forever, but for now." She didn't respond. He walked out into the golden light and was gone. Evie stood in the quiet, trembling not from disgust, but from the weight of choosing herself. Again, still, always. Evie sat on the edge of her porch, barefoot, knees pulled up, the breeze lifting strands of her hair across her cheek. She hadn't spoken to Grant in 6 days, not because she wanted to punish him, but because she was trying to remember what silence sounded like. Not the kind that fills a room when someone leaves, but the kind that lives inside you before you let them in. There had been no messages, calls, emails from his assistant, or gentle gestures from his team, just absence. And that hurt more than she wanted to admit. But it also gave her space to breathe. She'd spent the last few days rerouting herself, making banana bread that didn't rise right, walking to the farmer's market, rereading her old nursing school notes, and sitting with her mother, who now barely remembered what year it was, but somehow still remembered Evie's favorite flower. Lilies. Always lilies. Part of her wondered if love worked like that, if it planted itself so deep in us that even when everything else faded, it still bloomed in the corners. Her phone buzzed, a text from Grant. "Would you come to the clinic site tomorrow morning? No press, no speeches, just you. There's something I want you to see." She stared at the message, thumb hovering over the screen. Then she typed one word: yes. The next morning, the sky was soft gray, threatening rain but holding back. She parked in the gravel lot next to the old community center where the new clinic was being built. It wasn't much to look at yet. Scaffolding, exposed wood framing, the smell of sawdust and wet cement. But someone had put up a hand-painted sign in front. Monroe Whitaker Wellness Center. Her heart stuttered. Grant came around the corner, hands in pockets. No suit, no cameras, just jeans, boots, and a quiet vulnerability written all over him. "You put my name on it?" she asked, voice low. "No, I put the name of what this is, what you made it, what we could make it if you're still willing." She walked toward him slowly, eyes scanning the open frame of what would one day be a lobby, a clinic room, a sanctuary. He pointed to the ground. "That's where the children's counseling room will be. We have 3 local therapists already offering volunteer time. And there, grief group, weekly open, faith-based and secular. Depends on what people need." Her eyes filled with tears just a little. "I know I messed up," he said, "not because of the article, but because I forgot that protecting something doesn't always mean hiding it. Sometimes it means honoring it out loud." She didn't interrupt. "I didn't try to fix you this time," he added. "I didn't chase. I just waited." She looked around again. "This is more than I imagined." He moved closer carefully. So what do we do now? Evie breathed deeply, the scent of rain-soaked wood and potential filling her lungs. You keep building, I keep healing, and maybe we meet somewhere in the middle. He nodded. That sounds right. But I need you to know something. Anything. She turned to face him fully now. I love you, but that love can't cost my peace. If this ever becomes too big, too loud, too much about who you are and not about what we're doing, I'll walk away. He took her hand gently, fingers intertwining. Then I'll spend every day making sure that doesn't happen. She smiled, the weight in her chest softening, and for the first time since the storm began, she believed him. Not because of his words, but because he'd finally stopped trying to lead the story and started choosing to live it with her. 2 weeks later, the first coat of paint went up on the clinic walls. Evie stood in the middle of what would be the main waiting area, paint roller in her hand, her t-shirt stained with cream and sage. The color was warm, soft, what Grant had called hope. She hadn't meant to cry when the first brushstroke went up, but her body made the decision for her. It wasn't just a wall, it was a beginning. Grant came in from the hallway, wiping sweat from his forehead with a bandana. You missed a spot, he said, smiling, pointing to a corner behind the window frame. She looked at him over her shoulder. Are you going to fix it? I thought we agreed I'm not the fixer anymore. Well, she said, mischievous smile, you can fix paint. He took the roller from her and leaned just enough to brush his shoulder against hers. You smell like sweat and possibility, she said. Put that on my business cards. Evie watched him as he stretched to cover the missed spot. His movements were easy now, not rushed like they used to be. Grant in this space wasn't the man from magazine covers. He was something more, rooted, human, real. I saw my mother again, Evie said softly. Grant paused, roller in the air, and turned to her gently. How was it? She called me the wrong name for 10 minutes, thought I was one of the nurses. Her voice didn't crack, but the weight of the moment still sat in the center of her chest. Then she looked at me, really looked, and started crying. No words, just tears. He lowered the roller. I held her hand, she said. Didn't speak, just sat with her. That's everything. Evie nodded slowly. I'm not angry anymore. I thought I needed her to say the perfect thing to move forward, but it turns out I just needed to stop waiting for her to be the person she never was. Grant moved closer, voice softer. That's not nothing, Evie. That's liberation. I don't know what to do with all this peace, she said, laughing a little. I carried chaos for so long. It's like my hands don't know how to hold calm. He reached out and gently took her paint-stained fingers. Then we'll learn together. She didn't respond, but the way she leaned into him was answer enough. Outside, Rosa honked twice in her pickup. Evie blinked back to the moment. That's our supply run. Grant grabbed his keys. I'm coming with. Evie raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? You lasted about 15 minutes at the farmer's market before you looked like you needed a rescue helicopter. Only because you left me near the artisanal honey booth. Evie smiled. Come on, city boy. The trip to the hardware store was full of the kind of bickering that only means comfort. Rosa in the front seat throwing comments like popcorn, Grant trying to defend his choice in wall anchors, and Evie laughing so hard she had to roll down the window. When they reached the parking lot, Rosa got serious. I got a call from that reporter, she said, the one who wrote the profile. She wants to do a follow-up story, said she heard about the clinic, wants to feature it. Evie's jaw tensed. Did she say how she found out? No, but something tells me this place is attracting attention. Good attention. I don't want it to be about us, Evie said. This is about the community, not our story. Grant put a hand on her arm. Then we tell it through the community. Rosa nodded. So we make sure the story she gets is about the people it's for. Evie looked between them. Something solid clicked into place in her chest. This wasn't just hers anymore. It was theirs, all of theirs. Back at the site, when the sun dipped below the horizon, the three of them sat on the porch steps with bottles of cold water and aching backs. The air smelled like fresh wood and cut grass. Do you think people will show up? Rosa asked, watching the empty street beyond. Grant nodded. They're already showing up, just not all at once. Eva rested her head on his shoulder. Sometimes showing up doesn't look like fanfare. It looks like paint stains and long days and stories whispered across dinner tables. I prefer that, Rosa said, to press tours and grand openings any day. A pause. Then Grant looked at the half-finished structure, golden in the fading light. I used to think legacy meant my name in articles, he said. Now I think it just means being part of something that lasts. Evie reached for his hand. Then let's build something worth remembering. Nobody spoke after that. There was no need. The work was speaking for them. The clinic's first soft opening was scheduled for Sunday afternoon. No ribbon-cutting ceremony, no press releases. Just an open door, fresh coffee, and a chalkboard sign that Evie had written in her careful, neat handwriting. Come in, sit a while. You belong here. Grant stood behind her as she placed the sign outside. His hand rested gently on her lower back. Are you ready? No. He laughed softly. Me neither. She turned to face him. We built this from grief, from pressure, from hope. He nodded. And maybe a little paint, and some broken pieces. He rested his forehead against hers, voice barely above a whisper. I've never been prouder of anything. The door creaked behind them, and Rosa emerged in her Sunday best, jeans and a colorful scarf tied in her braids. Are you two done whispering out there like a Hallmark movie? We have muffins inside and chairs to arrange. Evie smiled. Yes, ma'am. People began arriving slowly. A young mother with 2 small children, an older man from the neighborhood who'd worked the shipyard his whole life, a teenager who said she just wanted to look around. Nobody came with fanfare. They walked quietly as if testing the air for safety, and stayed. Evie guided a woman to the grief support room after she asked for somewhere quiet to cry. Grant gave a gentle tour to a soft-spoken teen of the reading corner, stocked with donated books. Rosa handled everything else, arranging name tags, handing out coffee, greeting each guest like they were long-lost cousins. In the middle of it all, Eva ducked into one of the counseling rooms and sat for just a second. It hit her then, the weight of what they'd done and the even heavier truth of what it meant. They couldn't fix people. They could only offer a place to be seen. Grant peeked in, caught the look on her face and didn't say a word. Just crossed the room, sat beside her and slipped his hand into hers. Breathe, he whispered. I am breathing. Looks like more than that. It's everything, Grant. My whole life I kept trying to find a place where I wasn't too much or not enough, and now I think I made that place. He leaned back in his chair and smiled. Yes, you did. A knock on the door. Rosa peeked in. Someone here for you, Evie. Evie stood up, smoothed her shirt, walked back to the hallway, and froze. Standing just inside the front door, holding a bouquet of slightly wilted lilies, was her mother. Thin hair, watery eyes, shoulders shaking a little from the effort of standing too long. Mom, her mother blinked. I had someone help me get here. Your friend, Rosa, she found me. Evie crossed the room slowly. You came all this way. I wanted to see where you live. I don't live here. Not really. No, her mother said, her voice suddenly clearer than it had been in weeks. You do live. Maybe not your bed, but this is where you live, Evie. Evie blinked hard. How do you remember that? I didn't remember. I felt. That's different. Grant stood in the corner out of the way, watching. Rosa beside him, tears already forming. Evie reached for the bouquet, held it like something sacred. I couldn't say many things, her mother whispered, but I'm here now. If that still counts. It counts, Evie said, and for a moment, just one. The past didn't matter. The forgetting didn't matter. The lost years, the missed birthdays, the painful silences, they folded gently into the room like dust settling in the light. Later that evening, after the last guest had left and the chairs were stacked and the coffee makers emptied, Eva sat on the clinic steps with Grant. She rested her head on his shoulder. Are you okay? He asked. No, she said, but in the best way. The street was quiet. The sign still said, you belong here. And for the first time in her life, she believed it. The clinic opened fully 6 months after that quiet Sunday. No press, no famous donors, just volunteers, community organizers, teachers, retired nurses, and people who wanted to do something with their hands that felt like love. On the first day of the new mental health program, Eva arrived early, unlocking the doors as sunrise began to pour down East Jones Street. The light was different in Savannah this time of year, slower, heavier, like it had its own stories to tell. She carried 2 coffees, one black, one with lots of cream and sugar, and found Grant already inside, adjusting art on the wall in the main hallway, photos of families, quiet landscapes, and handwritten quotes from patients who'd left anonymous letters. He turned when he heard her. "You beat me," she said, offering the coffee. Had to make sure the hope sign wasn't crooked. "It's always crooked. I like it that way." She smiled and handed him the cup. "Are you ready?" He didn't answer immediately, just looked at her with that quiet, steady gaze he'd perfected over the months. Not the kind of man who needed to dazzle anymore, just the kind who showed up. "I think," he finally said, "I've never been more ready for anything." Patients began arriving through the morning. A woman came in, holding her husband's hand, both in their 70s, asking for couples counseling. A teenager with chipped nails and downcast eyes checked in at the front desk with a school counselor beside her. A local pastor dropped off baked goods for the waiting room. Nobody asked permission to belong. They just walked in as if they'd always been meant to be there. In the break room, Rosa handed Eva a sealed envelope. "Found this on your desk." Eva opened it slowly. Inside was a short note, handwritten in bold, careful strokes. "Evie, I was going to write something profound, but I think you already know. You saved me. You saved all of us. Thank you." She folded it gently, held it against her chest for a moment. "Caleb?" Rosa asked softly. Evie nodded. "He still won't show his face. Some people love better from a distance." Evie looked up. "But he did love." Rosa smiled. "That's more than most ever get." By noon, Evie found herself outside in the back courtyard, needing a moment. The sun was high, birds chattering above, the scent of fresh-cut grass heavy in the air. Grant found her there. "They're asking for you inside," he said. "I know. I just needed to feel it all for a second." "Too much?" "No, just enough." He sat beside her, knees touching. "You're different now. So are you. I had everything and still felt empty. Then I lost you, and figured out what enough really means." "Did you?" She looked at him, her gaze soft but clear. "Are you still afraid of quiet?" "Every day. But I learned to stay anyway." She nodded. "That's the difference, isn't it? Not who we are when it's perfect, but who we are when it's hard." He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small wrapped in a velvet pouch. Evie blinked. "If that's a ring, I'm going to cry, and maybe also run." He laughed, shaking his head. "No, not yet. It's not about that. Not yet." He handed it to her. Inside was a small, hand-carved stone heart, smooth, worn, simple. "I found it at a market last week," he said. "The guy who made it said he uses broken pieces to create new shapes." She rolled it between her fingers. "It's beautiful. It's us," he said. "Not perfect, but made from every piece that brought us here." She looked at him, tears threatening. "Do you still choose me? Even now? Especially now?" The silence fell, but it wasn't empty. It was the kind that held things. Years, grief, hope, love, and everything that didn't need to be said anymore. Later that evening, after everyone had gone, Evie stood alone in the front lobby. The lights dimmed, the windows glowing with twilight. She ran her hand across the reception desk, looked at the scuffed floor, the community mural on the far wall still drying in some corners, and whispered to no one in particular, "We did it." Not because the work was done, but because the love that built it had taken root. And maybe that was the most beautiful part of all. Not that they fell in love, but that they kept choosing it. Even after the stories ended, even after the lights went out, even in the silence, they still chose. Did you enjoy this moving story? If it touched you as much as it touched me, click like. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that will touch your heart. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any. Tell me in the comments, Do you believe love can transform lives? Have you ever had an experience that completely changed your perspective? I want to hear your stories. And don't forget to share this video with that special person who needs to believe in second chances and the power of human connection. Until the next story, sending love from the heart.